It is a warm and sunny morning at Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan, where a NASA astronaut, a Russian cosmonaut, and a Japanese astronaut are aboard a newly upgraded Soyuz spacecraft, 160 feet atop a Soyuz booster, ready to launch a little less than an hour from now at 8:36 tonight Central Time, 7:36 a.m. local time in Baikonur. This is a live view of the Soyuz rocket on the Site 1 launch pad at Baikonur. A team of launch controllers are watching over all systems aboard the rocket, which is now fully fueled and ready for launch. No issues have been tracked throughout the day, which began with fuel and oxidizer loading at about 3:36 p.m. Central Time, or 2:36 a.m. in Baikonur, and it was completed about 2 hours later. Good evening, everyone, from the International Space Station Flight Control Room. This is Mission Control Houston. Along with flight control teams around the world supporting the ISS program here in Mission Control, a team is watching over the Expedition 48 crew and station systems and preparing to support the increase from 3 crew members to 6 with the addition of NASA astronaut Kate Rubins, Russian cosmonaut Anatoly Ivanishin, and Japanese Aerospace Exploration Agency astronaut Takuya Onishi. These 3 are about to begin a 2-day flight to the International Space Station, with docking scheduled for this Friday, July 8th at 11:12 p.m. Central Time. The Soyuz MS-01 will be docking with the Rosvet module, also known as the Mini Research Module 1, on the Earth-facing side of the Russian segment of the space station. The crew will be joining the current station residents aboard, and they are Expedition 48 Commander Jeff Williams and flight engineers Alexei Ovchinin and Oleg Skripochka. Those 3 are now in their 4th month aboard the station, having arrived back on March 19th, and they're scheduled to return home aboard the Soyuz TMA-20M in early September. Here in Houston tonight, the team in Mission Control will be monitoring tonight's launch and getting updates on the flight from their Russian counterparts. Today's flight director is Scott Stover, and the Capcom for launch is astronaut Reed Wiseman. During the Soyuz climb to orbit, tracking and telemetry is downlinked to ground stations along the flight path and routed to the Russian Mission Control Center outside of Moscow. We're now 1 hour and 3 minutes away from the launch of the Expedition 48 crew to the International Space Station. This mission launches under the call sign Irkut, chosen by Soyuz Commander Anatoly Ivanishin in tribute to his hometown of Irkutsk in southern central Russia. The crew mission patch shows the crew members' names and a prominent 01 representing this first new modernized system version of the venerable Soyuz spacecraft. And within the large number 0 sits Mars. Although not a destination for this spacecraft, the work that the crew will do on board the space station contributes to our knowledge and understanding of what it will take to bring humans to visit and explore that planet someday. The talisman you may see hanging over the commander's seat during ascent is a small toy bear chosen by Takuya Onishi and given to him by his young daughter to take along on his mission. It will be the first visual indicator of the weightlessness for the Soyuz crew just under 9 minutes into their flight. Dr. Kate Rubins, sitting in the Soyuz far right seat, is flying to space today for the first time on her way to spend 4 months on board the International Space Station as flight engineer of the Expedition 48 and 49 crews. Let's take this opportunity for a look at her road to becoming an astronaut.
When I was a little kid, I had a career list, and it was astronaut, biologists, and geologists. So far, I've gotten 2 out of the 3. I was always very interested in viruses. I started getting interested in DNA and viruses when I was about 16 and was working in public health. We were studying HIV integrase and trying to come up with some treatments for HIV. That led to a PhD at Stanford, where I was looking at viruses such as monkeypox and smallpox and Ebola, Marburg and Lassa fever. And they're some of our most deadly viruses, so we have incredibly specialized labs to contain those, biosafety level 4 labs. We also did field work in Africa looking at outbreaks. So we went to Congo and set up a small field research site there in order to be able to treat these patients and to understand how the virus was emerging in these populations. I've always been interested in DNA and physiological responses at the cellular and the molecular level. So at the cellular level, I think that's one of the most exciting things for me on space station is to take a look at all these processes and how they're influenced by the lack of gravity. You know, if you look at human evolution in history, we have always been exploring and we've always been observing our world, which is really what scientists do. And so I think it's absolutely the next step to push forward and to see where we're going in our exploration of the solar system. I'm just pretty excited to be flying on ISS and to be a really small part of that big human process. I'm Kate Rubens, and I'm an astronaut.
This is the Flight Engineer 3.
Welcome back to our live coverage of the launch of Kate Rubens, Anatoly Ivanishyn, and Takuya Onishi to the International Space Station. Veteran Russian cosmonaut Anatoly Ivanishyn will be making his second journey into space today for his second long-duration mission on the International Space Station. He'll be in the Soyuz center seat for his first time serving as the Soyuz commander and also as the first ever commander of this new Soyuz MS series. He first flew into space in November 2011 aboard the last of the baseline Soyuz TMA series, TMA-22, along with NASA astronaut Dan Burbank and cosmonaut Anatoly Shkaplerov. Ivanishyn spent 5 months on board the space station as flight engineer for Expeditions 29 and 30. This time he'll serve as the Space Station Expedition 48 flight engineer and then transition to commander of Expedition 49 after the departure of Jeff Williams, Alexei Ovchinin, and Oleg Skripochka in early September. Japanese Aerospace Exploration Agency astronaut Takuya Onishi is sitting in the far left Soyuz seat. He will be venturing into space for the first time today. An engineering graduate from the University of Tokyo, Onishi served as a Boeing 767 pilot before being chosen to join JAXA's astronaut corps in 2009. Onishi also served as a member of the NASA Extreme Environment Mission Operations, or NEMO, 15 team in the Aquarius underwater habitat off of Key Largo, Florida, in October of 2011. He served there for 6 days, learning tools and techniques in a simulated mission environment. And for this mission, he'll serve on board the space station as flight engineer for Expeditions 48 and 49. We're still on track for an on-time liftoff today at 8:36 p.m. Central Time or 7:36 a.m. Baikonur time.
This is the Irkut 3.
The launch vehicle's control systems have been prepared and the gyros activated. During the climb to orbit, tracking and telemetry from the Soyuz vehicle is downlinked to the ground stations along the flight path and routed first to the launch control bunker near the launch pad in Baikonur, and then onto the Russian Mission Control Center outside of Moscow. The flight is controlled from the bunker until shutdown of the third stage engine when it's transitioned to the Russian Flight Control Center. Seconds after the Soyuz reaches orbit, the command and control system will activate. Stored computer commands will deploy navigation and communications antennas, and the vehicle's solar arrays will deploy to collect sunlight that the onboard batteries will use to power the Soyuz systems. The first antenna to be deployed will be the Kurs rendezvous and docking antenna, which will be used to provide automatic range and rate of closure information on the final approach of the Soyuz for its docking with the Rosvet module 2 days from now. And then immediately after reaching orbit, the crew will oversee the programmed activation sequence of a variety of systems. That happens just before the spacecraft passes out of range of Russian ground stations, and the systems include the spacecraft's power supply system, its radio communication system, and the critical motion control system. 3.5 hours into today's flight, the Soyuz will automatically execute the first of several orbital adjustment burns planned as the vehicle fine-tunes its path to the International Space Station. The crew was awakened at about 11:35 a.m. Central Time this morning, 10:35 p.m. local time in Baikonur, about 9 hours prior to launch. The crew members then participated in final pre-launch activities. Before departing for the launch pad, 3 crew members observed the long-standing tradition of autographing the doors of the Cosmonaut Hotel in Baikonur, Kazakhstan. You can see the crew doing that here. Again, autographing the doors of their Cosmonaut Hotel where they've been staying in Kazakhstan. Kate Rubins adding her signature here.
We will be praying for you. We will be waiting.
And then receiving a special blessing from a priest here in Kazakhstan too.
Thank you very much.
Give them good luck on their upcoming launch.
Thank you. God preserve you.
Around 2:35 p.m. Central Time, or 1:35 in the morning in Baikonur, the crew departed the Cosmonaut Hotel and boarded a bus for the ride to the integration and suit-up facility at Building 254 at the Baikonur Cosmodrome. Takuya Onishi there waving to the crowd along with Kate Rubins standing next to him. And there's Anatoly Ivanishin.
Everything will be fine.
The crew arrived at Building 254 around 3:20 p.m. Central Time, or 2:20 a.m. in Baikonur. Each crew member underwent final medical exams, then suited up in their so-called launch and entry suits. The suits were pressurized to ensure the integrity of their seals. The actual suit-up activities began around 4:05 p.m. Central Time today, or 3:05 a.m. in Baikonur, about 4.5 hours prior to launch. Anatoly Ivanishin here getting suited up in his Sokol suit.
I read you loud and clear. How me? Could you repeat it again? I read you loud and clear. Yes, please. All 3 crew members visible here. Kate Rubins on the far left of the screen with Anatoly Ivanishin in the center and Takuya Onishi on the right.
Once the suit activities were completed and the pressure in the suits was verified to be airtight, the crew prepared to depart for the launch pad. From behind a protective pane of glass to maintain their quarantine status, the crew spoke to various Roscosmos, NASA, and JAXA managers, as well as with friends and family. This is the last chance for the crew to talk with everyone before they head out to the launch pad, and it's a chance for each of them to relax a little bit while the others are going through their leak checks. Anatoly Ivanishin there again going first, followed by Takuya Onishi. And now Kate Rubins here, going through her leak check in her Sokol launch and entry suit. Crew members here gathering behind that protective pane of glass for a last chance to talk with their friends and family members, as well as managers from the various space agencies represented at this launch.
Well, right now it should be as good as landing. Yes, that happens. I would like to wish you a successful flight to the ISS. And you have a very intense flight program, but you know what to do. And I have confidence you will make it happen. And we're looking forward to your successful return. And along with people who are going to work with you on the ground, we're wishing you all the best. Okay. All the best.
The ground teams and all the folks that support you here on the Earth, we're all ready to support you and have a great expedition. Enjoy the space station. You'll be very busy. Spend a good quality time looking down at the Earth. Think about how we can use this to do bigger and bolder things and move humans into the solar system. So again, thank you. Take great care of space station, and we'll see you soon.
That's Bill Gerstenmaier, NASA's Associate Administrator for Human Exploration and Operations.
Just before launch, I'm sure you are all ready. So do your best in space. Thank you.
And with all of those preparations behind them, the crew then left Site 254, getting one last chance to walk out and wave goodbye to their friends and family who've gathered to watch the launch.
Chairman of the Government Commission, the crew is ready for lunch. We accept your report.
Crew members boarded this bus around 5:35 p.m. Central Time or 4:35 a.m. in Baikonur for the ride to Launch Pad 1. That drive takes about 25 minutes, and that put them in place at the pad at 6 p.m. Central Time or 5 a.m. in Baikonur.
Soyuz crew ready for lunch.
Kate Rubins there walking with Bill Gerstenmaier, again the Associate Administrator for Human Exploration and Operations at NASA. Next to him, Kirk Shireman, the Program Manager for the space station. After waving goodbye at the pad, the crew board an elevator for the ride to the top of the Soyuz rocket, where they board their capsule. They've been on board the Soyuz now for about an hour and a half, and the Soyuz rocket was fueled about 3 hours prior to launch. Welcome back now to a live view of the launch pad and coverage of the launch of Kate Rubins, Anatoly Ivanishin, and Takuya Onishi to International Space Station. 7:55 p.m. Central Time, and we are now 41 minutes away from liftoff. The launch pad service structures components have been lowered, and the clamshell gantry service towers have been retracted in preparation for that launch.
No, they haven't. You can still clearly see them.
Soyuz rocket stands 162 feet tall and weighs 680,000 pounds. It consists of the Soyuz TMA-20M spacecraft inside a protective shroud at the top and a three-stage Soyuz FG booster below.
Did they give this? Did they give this woman the wrong launch report to read?
So view here of it at the processing facility where it was readied for launch and then rolled out via railway. It was mated to its booster and the three main stages there in that building on Sunday. Then transported via that rail car to the launch pad around 7 a.m. Baikonur time on Monday, where it was hoisted into its vertical position a short time later. The Soyuz spacecraft with its 3 crew members on board sits high above the 3 stages of the Soyuz booster, which uses kerosene and liquid oxygen as the propellant. The first stage of the Soyuz has 4 liquid engines strapped to the side of the core vehicle. Each will burn for about 1 minute and 58 seconds before they drop away. And at that point, the rocket will be 30 miles high and downrange 73 miles with a velocity of 3,937 miles per hour. See some animation here of what that launch that's coming up now in 39 minutes will look like. The core engine of the first stage also serves as a second stage and continues to burn until 4 minutes 57 seconds into flight. Altitude at that point will be 103 miles, and downrange distance will be 179 miles. The vehicle will be traveling some 8,679 miles per hour. Third stage has a single engine that will ignite just before separation of the second stage, helping to push it away. It will burn until 8 minutes, 45 seconds into flight, and at that point, the Soyuz will be in its preliminary orbit of 143 by 118 miles. We're still now on track for an on-time liftoff today at 8:36 p.m. Central Time or 7:36 a.m. Baikonur time.
Fancy left clamshell gantry set to retract. Because they haven't retracted yet, despite what this woman has said.
Suit leak checks on board this Soyuz should be beginning soon. Again, we are now 37 minutes away from today's 8:36 p.m. Central Time launch. At the time of today's launch, the International Space Station will be flying at an altitude of about 254 statute miles over southern Cameroon near the border of Equatorial Guinea. The 2-day 34-orbit rendezvous will culminate with docking to the station's Rosvet module this Friday, July 8th, at 11:12 p.m. Central Time, as the station flies over the South Pacific Ocean west of Chile.
Adjust the straps and shoulder straps.
Atop the rocket and within the Soyuz MS-01 spacecraft again are Kate Rubins, Anatoly Ivanishin, and Takuya Onishi. Now 36 minutes away from launch. Launch preparations are going smoothly, with launch scheduled for 8:36 p.m. Central or 7:36 a.m. Baikonur time. The whole Soyuz spacecraft is 23.5 feet long and weighs 15,496 pounds. It includes 3 modules. The first is the descent module, situated in the middle of the Soyuz vehicle. It contains customized seats for the crew members used during launch, entry, and landing, as well as all the controls and displays necessary for the flight. It also contains life support systems, batteries, and for the reentry and landing, and the parachutes and soft landing rocket engines that slow the Soyuz just before touchdown when the Soyuz lands in Kazakhstan. There are 8 hydrogen peroxide thrusters located on the module that are used to control the spacecraft's orientation or attitude during the descent until parachute deployment. It also has guidance, navigation, and control system to maneuver the vehicle during the descent phase of the mission. This descent module weighs 6,393 pounds with a habitable volume of 141 cubic feet. About 110 pounds of cargo can be returned to Earth in this module, and it's the only portion of the Soyuz that survives the return to Earth. The orbital module at the top connects to the descent module via a pressurized hatch. This is where the crew has a small amount of room to move around during the flight to the station. It has a volume of 230 cubic feet with a docking mechanism, hatch, and rendezvous antennas located at the front end. The docking mechanism is used to dock with the space station, and the hatch allows entry into the orbiting complex. The rendezvous antennas are used by the automated docking system, which uses radar, to maneuver toward the station for docking. There's also a forward-looking window in the module that the crew can use to take a manual measurement of the distance and closing speed with a laser rangefinder in the event of a failure of the rendezvous radar system. The propulsion module houses the oxygen storage tanks and the main engine, the attitude control thrusters, avionics, and communication and control equipment. The propulsion portion of this module handles all the orbital maneuvers, including those needed for the rendezvous with the space station and the deorbit burn at the end of the spacecraft's mission. Before they're deployed, the 2 solar arrays are folded against the body of the propulsion module, which separates from the descent module after deorbit burn, along with the orbital module, and the solar panels span almost 35 feet. The entire spacecraft serves not only as a crew transport vehicle to and from the station, but also as an emergency return vehicle in the event the crew should have to leave the station unexpectedly. Back now with a live view of the launch pad where Kate Rubins, Anatoly Ivanishin, and Takuya Onishi are awaiting liftoff to the International Space Station. Launch preparations are going smoothly, with launch scheduled for 8:36 p.m. Central Time or 7:36 a.m. Baikonur time. The emergency escape system has now been armed. This escape tower would fire in the event of a problem during launch. Systems designed to pull the spacecraft and crew clear of the booster, enabling the Soyuz capsule to parachute to a safe landing in the event of an emergency during the launch or early stages of the climb to orbit. This Soyuz crew launching to the International Space Station hails from 3 different nations and is a reflection of the spirit of international cooperation that's brought the world's most complex spacecraft together as a 21st century scientific marvel. An international partnership of space agencies from the United States, Russia, Europe, Japan, and Canada have worked together for more than 15 years on the most complex space exploration program ever undertaken.
It took 41 rocket launches just to bring the building materials to the construction site, and more than 100 other launches along the way to ferry up the human crew members and deliver the supplies they would need to live and work. The largest peacetime engineering and construction project in human history. And it wouldn't have happened if the nations of the world hadn't joined forces. But they did. And that cooperative spirit is alive and thriving right now on board the International Space Station. The major space agencies of the world each have their own independent exploration program. Yet they work together on one project that's vital to humankind's future in space. Operating a joint research laboratory and technology development station 250 miles above the Earth. The United States, Russia, Japan, Canada, and the nations of Europe each provide and train crew members who operate this space station.
We have come to know each other very well, to really enjoy each other's company, enjoy working together. I consider them very close friends.
При нашем взаимодействии внутри корабля мы отталкиваемся прежде всего от целей и задач, почему именно мы сидим в этом корабле. И поэтому у нас никаких особых проблем во взаимодействии, никаких нет, в силу нашей профессиональной способности.
I think each country has its unique strengths and good part and also a weakness. So if we cooperate each other, we can cover the other nations' weak part and help each other.
Over the years, the partners have contributed the vehicles that bring human beings to orbit, and the ones that make regular deliveries of supplies and materials, plus all the hardware and samples to operate a set of scientific laboratories and experiments that are achieving things that couldn't be done on Earth. The results, in terms of science and technology development, are out of this world.
Having different perspectives, either different scientific perspectives, different international perspectives, has helped bring strength to the work that we do. We've gotten to work with some incredible people around the globe, and that we found what we think are some significant findings.
The alpha magnetic spectrometer is a high-energy particle physics experiment designed to study cosmic rays, antimatter, dark matter, and dark energy. There's 15 countries, about 600 engineers, physicists, scientists, technicians, about 60 different institutes, universities, all over the planet. You get the interaction of all these people, and in the end, you have something that's a whole lot better than what you have done by yourself.
Each space agency takes responsibility for a part of the mission by operating a control room in their own country, which focuses on daily operations in their own labs and modules. The heart of the overall operation is at NASA's Mission Control Center in Houston, where a team coordinates what all the partners are doing.
The Outsplan team takes all of the requirements handed down from the ISS program, from the international partners, from the flight control team, and from the science community. And we integrate all of those requirements into a timeline, and we uplink it to the crew, and that's how the crew knows what to do on a given day.
With all that effort, over all these years, the partners in the International Space Station have created something that's already provided benefits on Earth and encouraged the growth of a commercial space industry, and is perfectly positioned to continue that mission, supporting future human exploration into deep space.
If you think about all the capability that's on the space station today, it brought out the best in each of the partners. The only way for exploration to be successful is to have that global partnership together, as we have had so far with the space station.
We're going to use the technology of the ATV, 5 very successful ISS resupply missions, to make this incredible contribution to the Orion spacecraft. So the service module will be a very critical part to the Orion spacecraft. It will provide power, it will provide thermal control, and most importantly, it will provide propulsion to the crew module.
Building on the robotics technology we developed to support the space shuttle program and then to assemble the space station, Canada's developed a next-generation Canadarm. This is a state-of-the-art suite of robotics prototypes that will be able to support the critical next steps in exploring the solar system.
У нас в России есть такая поговорка, что один ум хорошо, а 2 еще лучше. Но 2 и 3 это гораздо лучше, потому что, работая в кооперации международной, люди гораздо лучше начинают понимать друг друга.
Better understanding and a common goal combine for a great future out there.
Welcome back to our live coverage of the launch of Kate Rubins, Anatoly Ivanishin, and Takuya Onishi to the International Space Station. We're still on track for an on-time liftoff today at 8:36 p.m. Central Time or 7:36 a.m. in Baikonur. Today's launch will mark the first of the new Soyuz Modernized Systems, or MS, series of vehicles. Recently, my colleague Rob Navius had a chance to interview Mark Bowman, the chief engineer of the Soyuz branch of the astronaut office, about the reasons Russian engineers made those critical changes and what some of those changes are.
They stated two major reasons for performing the modifications. The first is to increase the reliability of the spacecraft, and the second is to enhance performance and technical specifications. There were a lot of changes. The first is a structural change. They added additional shielding for micrometeorite and orbital debris to the habitation module, and the intent of this is to increase what we in space parlance call the probability of non-penetration. In other words, to reduce the chance that a micrometeorite or some piece of orbital debris would actually punch a hole through the spacecraft. The second change is a modification to the electrical power system to increase the reserves of power. The first thing they did was to add a fifth battery assembly to the spacecraft. Each battery assembly consists of a prime battery and a backup battery, so by adding a fifth unit, that's a 20% increase in the energy storage capacity on the spacecraft. And to provide the power that go into those batteries, there are solar arrays on the spacecraft, and they added some additional surface area of the photoelectric cells on the solar arrays, which increased surface area by a little over a square meter of area. And they used additional or modern photoelectric cells on those arrays to increase the efficiency by about 2%. So that helps to increase the power reserves on the spacecraft. In addition, they changed the telemetry system, the radio system that sends telemetry down to the ground and receives commands from the ground in the spacecraft, to go to a much more modern system, what they're calling an integrated command and telemetry system. This makes use of the new Russian Luch satellites, which are analogous to our tracking and data relay satellites, and will greatly increase the amount of coverage that the communications systems on the spacecraft. So ground controllers would be able to send commands. As you know now, they can only command to the spacecraft for about a maximum of 20 minutes per orbit, and that's when they happen to be in an orbit that goes over a Russian ground station. Once this system is fully up and running and tested, they'll be able to send commands for at least 45% to perhaps 80 or 90% of an orbital coverage. Also as part of that Yakatea system, they've transitioned to an S-band system. They removed the old antennas that supported the old radio system and replaced those with 4 omnidirectional antennas that provide access to the spacecraft from all of the Russian ground sites. And additionally, they added a phased array antenna that will point at the Luch satellites, which are in geosynchronous orbit. So the phased array antenna allows them to point more precisely to get communication with those satellites. They also improved the communication system, the VHF communications radios in the descent module, which the crew members used for voice communications with the ground. The Yakatea system includes a backup capability that will eventually enable them to have voice communications in addition to VHF, but that's not functional yet on this first spacecraft. But the improvements to the VHF radios in the descent module provide a lot of additional safety to the crew members, because they've added global positioning satellite receiver on the hatch of the spacecraft. So once the parachutes have opened during reentry, they start taking data from a GPS, which tells the spacecraft where it's located. Then the radio system also has a new transponder that sends then that location to the COSPAR and SARSAT rescue satellite systems. It's a universal system that's used all over the world. And this will allow the search and rescue crews to quickly locate a spacecraft in the event, say, of bad weather or a ballistic entry. So it greatly improves the reliability. The other thing they did was change the Kurs rendezvous radar system, which has been used for many years on the Soyuz. The new Kurs includes much upgraded avionics, modernized electronic systems, new antennas. They have actually reduced the antenna footprint on the spacecraft. As you know, you've seen the iconic photo looking out of the blister of the Soyuz as they approach the ISS, and you can see an antenna that's rotating in the field of view. That is a Kurs antenna that is no longer needed. It was very complicated mechanically, and also it had to be retracted prior to docking with the space station so that it didn't come in contact with station structure. The new cores allows them to put a small phased array antenna on a fixed bracket that doesn't have to be retracted. It weighs less, uses less power, it's much less complicated. Also, you might recollect a boom on the aft end of the spacecraft that had two Coors antennas. That boom has been removed, and the antenna has been placed on fixed locations on the spacecraft body. So that simplifies the spacecraft and reduces weight. All in all, the Coors modifications reduced the weight of the Coors system by about 25 kilograms and takes about 30% less volume, and it uses about 24% less power. So pluses all the way around. Another thing that they did to this spacecraft is change the approach and attitude control thrusters, which in Russian we call the DPO thrusters, that are used to maneuver the spacecraft and change its orientation. The previous DPO thrusters, there were 28 of them. 16 of them were large thrusters of about 13 kilograms of thrust, and 12 of them were small thrusters, about 3 kilograms in thrust. The new configuration uses 28 all large thrusters. And it provides a lot of redundancy now by positioning 14 pairs of thrusters around the spacecraft so that there's a redundant thruster for every other thruster, and they are operated on separate, completely redundant manifolds for propellant. So if one thruster fails, the other thruster immediately, in its pair, immediately picks up and assumes control. You recall in December when the 45 Soyuz approached and they had a false indication of a thruster failing, that required the crew members to manually take over and dock to the space station. With the new thruster configuration, that would not have been a problem. A failure of one thruster just transitions to the thruster on the backup manifold. The other advantage of the new thruster configuration is that on the aft end of the spacecraft, there are 8 thrusters instead of 4. So if during, say, a deorbit burn, for example, if the main engine were to fail, now you have 4 large thrusters to be able to perform your deorbit burn instead of only 4. And so that provides additional level of redundancy as well.
How have all these modifications been tested, Mark?
Well, the testing has been comprehensive and extensive. Most or many of the modifications have already flown on previous versions of the Soyuz. Even though they were TMA-M vehicles, they one by one implemented some of the modifications. They tested the redundant drive motors in the docking system. They tested the core system. So they've been tested on both Progress and Soyuz vehicles. And then finally, the last 2 Progresses, 62P and 63P, have included all of the modifications comprehensively so that they'll have 2 positive flights and positive test results on Progress vehicles, giving them great confidence that the Soyuz will be fine.
This launch will send Kate Rubins and her crewmates on a deliberate 2-day rendezvous instead of the more common 4-orbit 6-hour rendezvous that we've become accustomed to. Why?
Well, the main reason for going to a 34-orbit rendezvous on this flight is to provide additional time to test the new systems. Going to 34 orbit gives them lots of time to test the new unified or integrated command and telemetry system. It gives them a chance to do some flying quality assessments with the new thruster configuration, and it gives them a chance to test communications using the new Luch satellites as well as the ground systems, which have been upgraded to work with the S-band telemetry.
Back now with a live view of the Soyuz on the launch pad in Baikonur, where we are now just 17 minutes away from launch. Liftoff scheduled for 8:36 p.m. Central Time or 7:36 a.m. there in Baikonur. A group of NASA representatives is there in Baikonur, just a short distance away from the launch pad. And for an update on activities there, let's go now to NASA Public Affairs Officer Rob Navius.
Brandy, it has taken a couple of additional weeks to get to this moment, but a multinational crew is set to launch here in the Central Asian desert, and a large crowd is on hand to watch them begin their 2-day journey to the International Space Station. It's almost an hour and a half after sunrise, and it is warm, just what you would expect for an early July day in Baikonur. Among those in attendance are Bill Gerstenmaier, NASA's Associate Administrator for Human Exploration, and NASA's Kirk Shireman, the ISS Program Manager. The Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency is also well represented, including its new ISS program chief, veteran astronaut Koichi Wakata. After launch, we'll fly back to Moscow and gather at the Russian Mission Control Center Saturday morning Moscow time to cover docking for this upgraded and modernized Soyuz, as well as hatch opening, which will be accompanied by congratulatory calls for the newly arrived crew members from VIPs and family members gathered at that facility. So with everything in readiness for what should be a post-sunrise spectacular, that's it for now from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. Now back to you at Mission Control in Houston.
Continuing to see live views from the launch pad, now 15 minutes away from launch. Leak checks of the crew's launch suits are just about complete. Those should be done anytime now. And within the numeral 0 on the Soyuz MS-01 mission patch, there is a small red sphere helping explain one of the primary benefits we receive from knowledge learned living and working on board the International Space Station.
Do you already mention that?
Mars is our goal. There are so many scientific questions we want to answer there. We might even find the first evidence of life beyond Earth. We've already proven we can send a rover to Mars. But now we need to learn how to send people. Astronauts like me. A human mission to Mars and back could take 2.5 years. And we don't know for sure how people will hold up in weightlessness for that long. We need the people we send to Mars to be healthy enough to do work once they get there. And that's why the one-year mission of Scott Kelly and Mikhail Kornienko on the International Space Station was so important. We started testing Scott and Misha a year before they launched and kept taking samples from them throughout on orbit to see how they reacted over time to being in weightlessness. Doctors checked them out at the landing site right out of their Soyuz spaceship, and they'll undergo additional tests for many more months on the ground. Then we've got to dig through all that data gathered to learn more. We're studying information about bone loss and muscle weakness and effects to their fine motor skills. We're studying the psychological effects of an extended spaceflight and how well they slept. We're looking to see if there was an impact to their vision. We're looking at everything to make sure the people we send to Mars will make the trip safely. On top of measuring the impacts of weightlessness to the human crew, we're using these International Space Station missions to learn about the hardware and technology we need for the trip. Things like how to refine our life support systems to make them more reliable, how to use robots to help humans do their work. We're even figuring out how to communicate effectively over these huge distances and how to make the human crew members more self-sufficient. The International Space Station is our testbed to work out the details of how to send people to these deep space destinations and bring them home safely. In the process, we're also promoting international cooperation and enabling commercial participation in spaceflight research, all while we generate benefits that are helpful to people on Earth today.
NASA astronaut Kate Rubins has been in training for more than 2 years for her first spaceflight and long-duration space station mission. I had a chance to talk with her while she was in the final stages of training in Russia about her planned scientific research on board the station and what she's looking forward to during her 4-month stay. I know that with your background in science, you're a scientist here on Earth before you even became an astronaut, you were really looking forward to getting your hands on the science equipment on board the space station. Can you tell us a little bit about what you are most excited about, what experiments you're going to be performing and you're looking forward to?
Yeah, I'm incredibly excited about a lot of the biology experiments, of course, that we're going to be doing on Space Station. So I think some of the most interesting pieces of equipment that we've got on board for research capabilities are some of the ones that we're going to be doing for the first time on our mission, which is trying to sequence DNA in low Earth orbit. That's going to be very interesting and exciting. It gives us a great capability for Space Station going forward, both for studying diseases on the planet as well as our future exploration for Mars beyond low Earth orbit. Also, there's a phenomenal research suite on board to actually study cellular material. So we're going to be bringing up a couple different kinds of cells. We're going to be bringing up heart cells and looking at how heart tissue organizes itself and how that behaves without gravity as a presence. And we're also going to be looking at bone cells. So what happens to the kinds of bone cells that are responsible for bone regeneration when they no longer have that gravity stimulus.
And for those experiments and just in general, what would you say, as a scientist, is the value of the lab on the space station, a lab in microgravity?
That's a really good question because the space station is this enormous engineering achievement, and we've seen the international partner agencies come together to build this incredible space station. But one of the most exciting things to me is actually the science that we can do, that we can utilize the space station for. And the unique thing about the space station is that we are in this low Earth orbit environment. So we don't have gravity. We really have this presence of microgravity. It's very, very small amounts of gravity. We're in free fall around the planet. And so on Earth, anytime you do an experiment, you always have that gravitational force. And that's never anything that you can vary in your experimental conditions. What we have on the space station is the ability to vary how much gravitational force we're putting into the cells or the tissues, or even sometimes the human body is the experiment. So another thing that's really unique about the space station is the environment that it's in. It's traveling at 17,500 miles an hour. It's in a slightly different place in the magnetic field. It's in a different place in the atmosphere than when we have an experimental station on the ground. So we can see things like heavy particle radiation, ionizing radiation, in a slightly different way. We can take a look at, for example, the search for dark matter in the universe with the alpha magnetic spectrometer in a slightly different way than we could using Earth-based laboratories.
And you just mentioned that sometimes the human body is an experiment, and in this case, that's you. So has it been interesting or different to kind of turn the tables and be the experiment yourself in some cases?
Yeah, it is kind of funny sometimes to be the experiment and the experimenter. So all of the research that we do, of course, is subject to human studies regulation and done through informed consent, but we do have the opportunity in a lot of cases to be the experiment. So I think that's really fascinating for me, actually, is to see the response of the human body physiologically to microgravity. So we know things like the immune system changes, there's some dysregulation of the immune system. When you're in microgravity, you no longer have fluid drawn to your feet the whole time. So there's changes in where the fluid shifts around in your body and fluid compartmentalization. We certainly know that there's cardiovascular changes. There's changes with your heart and the way you pump blood in your body. We know that there's skin changes on board. We do know that there's changes in the levels of dormant viruses that will reactivate, as well as the microbial ecosystem that surrounds us. So pretty much any system you can think of, there's some really interesting observation that we can make in low Earth orbit that we can't study on the ground.
Okay, clearly there's a lot to be excited about as a scientist, but now shifting gears a little bit to as an astronaut, what are you looking forward to? The ride on the rocket, the possibility of a spacewalk, and just looking out the window?
Yeah, I think the moment that I'm most looking forward to is that first moment when we open the hatch on the space station and we get to float in and we get to look out the cupola. I think your first glimpse of the planet from the space station is a pretty incredible moment. I think, really all of the above. The ride on the rocket's going to be amazing, probably fairly indescribable. And the opportunities that we have to actually install some hardware on the space station are really interesting on our mission. So we're hoping to install the international docking adapter to the front of space station. This is going to allow us to do commercial crew flights to the station with our US-based partners, as well as the upgrading of space station to have lithium-ion battery capability. This is really going to allow our energy storage to go well into 2020 and beyond to maintain space station as this incredible laboratory.
Well, it sounds like there's a lot going on in your mission. Anything else in particular that you can tell people to be watching out for?
Yeah, so I'm hoping to share some of these experiences through the NASA Astronauts account. We'll see if my photography skills are up to par with those of Scott Kelly and Jeff Williams. They have set a pretty high bar. So we'll do our best as Expedition 48 crew to share a little bit of this journey with you, both the research that we're doing as well as the views that we're seeing outside.
We can't wait to see them. Thanks so much. Have a great trip into space and a good mission.
Thanks.
Welcome for those just joining us to our live coverage of the Soyuz MS-01 launch from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. You're seeing a live view of the Soyuz on the launch pad in Baikonur, and we are now 6 minutes and 23 seconds away from liftoff, which is scheduled for 8:36 p.m. Central Time or 7:36 a.m. Baikonur time. Soyuz vehicle gyros and onboard flight data recorders have been activated, and the pre-launch preparations are now complete. The crew has even closed their helmets, which puts them on suit oxygen. You can see views here inside the cabin looking at Anatoly Ivanishin, who is on the left-hand side of the screen, actually in the center seat of the Soyuz, and next to him on the right is Takuya Onishi. Not seen in this view is Kate Rubin sitting in the right-hand or the left-hand seat.
Launch key inserted.
Launch key has been inserted in the launch bunker, and that is a real key, and it transitions the launch sequence into automatic mode. We're now 5 minutes and 20 seconds away from launch.
Run 1 command. Combustion chamber nitrogen purge.
The range in Baikonur is clear, and the Soyuz rocket is ready to begin its journey now in 4 minutes. Now from the scheduled 8:36 p.m. Central Time liftoff, the onboard systems have been switched to onboard control, and the commander's cockpit displays and controls have been activated.
Run 2 command on board measurement system is activated. Oxidizer and fuel drain of launch vehicle are closed.
Fuel lines and other elements of the rocket engines are purged with nitrogen to fireproof them by removing vapors of fuel and oxidizer. 3 minutes and 15 seconds now to go until liftoff. Everything proceeding as planned for today's 8:36 p.m. Central Time liftoff of NASA astronaut Kate Rubins, Roscosmos cosmonaut Anatoly Ivanishin, and JAXA astronaut Takuya Onishi.
Booster propellant tank pressurization initiated.
The booster tank is being pressurized for flight. This optimizes the flow of fuel and helps add structural support to the rocket. Now less than 2.5 minutes to go until liftoff. Two minutes until launch. Less than a minute and a half now to go. The ground propellant feed should now have been terminated, and we are closing in again on that 8:36 p.m. Central Time liftoff. With 1 minute left, the Soyuz is now on internal power, and we should have auto sequence start.
Should see a transmission back first country. Yep, there you go. One back.
Vehicle to internal power, ground propellant feed terminated.
First umbilical tower separated from the booster, and the ground umbilical to the third stage has been disconnected. 20 seconds now until liftoff.
Boost ignition.
Launch command issued for ignition.
Launch command has been issued. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Pumps at flight speed. Engines at maximum thrust.
Liftoff. Soyuz.
And liftoff
Of the Soyuz.
of Kate Rubins, Anatoly Ivanishyn, and Takuya Onishi, now on their way to the International Space Station.
Liftoff the Soyuz.
15 seconds into the flight, everything is nominal. Everything is fine on board. This is Irkut.
Good first stage performance. Soyuz delivering 930,000 pounds of thrust from its four boosters and single engine. The first stage of the Soyuz measured 68 feet in length and 24 feet in diameter, and it burns liquid fuel for the first 2 minutes and 6 seconds of flight.
Stabilization is performing as planned. Everything is fine on board.
One minute now into today's flight of the Soyuz MS-01. Velocity of the vehicle is now at 1,100 miles per hour.
Is nominal. We are fine and everything is good on board.
A minute and a half into the day's flight, everything looking good on board the Soyuz.
90 seconds.
View here of the crew inside the Soyuz, looking at Anatoly Ivanishyn and Takuya Onishi. Not seen here, but sitting next to them is Kate Rubins.
You should see them jerk forward.
And the crew here on the ground reporting that the escape tower on board the Soyuz has been jettisoned. And the Soyuz 4 strap-on boosters have also been jettisoned. They've completed their job and dropped away at an altitude of 28 statute miles. The Soyuz now traveling at about 3,350 miles an hour.
130 seconds into the flight, stabilization is nominal.
Oh, new Russian telemetry and new Russian animation. Nice. I've never seen this before. And they're using meters per second. Yes.
150 seconds into the flight, second stage thrusters are functioning nominally.
So you can see the
everything is
Team here on the ground reporting that the launch shroud has also been jettisoned now. The rocket's altitude is 48 miles high.
So that's 90 kilometers.
3 minutes and 3 seconds into the flight, everything's still going well. Soyuz traveling at a speed of about 4,700 miles an hour. And there is Kate Rubins sitting in the left seat, waving at the camera. Soyuz core stage performing as expected.
We are watching flight engineer.
Core stage of Soyuz is 56 feet in length, 13.5 feet in diameter, and it has a single engine with 4 fuel chambers providing between 178,222 601 pounds of thrust for its 3 minutes and 28 seconds of operation. Stage will continue to burn until 4 minute and 43-second mark. Soyuz uses what's called a hot stage technique. The third stage will ignite while the second stage is still burning. This is why the Soyuz has an open area in between the second and third stages. Four minutes now into the flight, everything continuing to go as planned as the Soyuz begins making its way towards the International Space Station.
– 250 seconds into the flight. Your pitch and roll are nominal. We are feeling fine. Everything is good on board.
It's altitude 148. Approaching 150 kilometers. And downrange 440 kilometers. And 5 seconds until
4 minutes and 46 seconds now into the flight. The third stage of the Soyuz is igniting, and the second stage is shutting down.
We confirm.
And we've confirmed that the core booster separated an altitude of 105 miles or 170 kilometers. Soyuz is now being propelled by a single engine of the Soyuz's third stage. This engine is providing 67,000 pounds of thrust and will burn for 4 minutes and 2 seconds. Five minutes and 45 seconds now into flight. Everything's still looking good. Soyuz continuing to make its way into low Earth orbit on its way to the International Space Station with Kate Rubins, Anatoly Ivanishin, and Takuya Onishi aboard.
We are feeling fine. Everything is good on board. – 370 seconds into the flight. All parameters of the structure are nominal. Everything is good on board.
Roughly 2 minutes until
400 seconds into the flight. Stabilization is performing as planned.
Seven minutes now into flight, and that single engine of the third stage continuing to work just as it should.
Minutes remaining in this burn.
– 140 seconds into the flight. Stabilization is performing as planned. We are feeling well, and everything is good on board.
Here the crew continuing to report that everything's going well on board. The Soyuz is now going almost 13,500 miles an hour. Once the third stage delivers the Soyuz to orbit and the module is separated, there will be a series of pre-programmed commands to be executed to prepare the Soyuz for orbital operations. These stored commands are called time tag commands and allow many of the Soyuz systems to be automatically activated by onboard computers at precise times stored in the computers.
We're feeling well. Everything is good on board.
Seconds.
500 seconds into the flight. The flight is nominal. We are feeling fine. Everything is good on board. Be ready for the separation.
Stop. RT is cut off.
And the third stage separation being confirmed here on the ground. You saw the crew reacting to it on board there, and now exchanging some fist bumps. The single liquid-fueled engine is shut down and dropped away at an altitude of 125 statute miles.
Irkut, MCC Moscow, how copy?
Soyuz capsule and crew inside are now safely in orbit, and the spacecraft is automatically executing its pre-programmed commands to deploy the antennas and solar arrays.
We copy you, Moscow. Everything is fine. The heating of antennas is on. We are feeling well.
Good report there from the crew. Soyuz is orbiting now an altitude of about 143 miles by 118 miles. That orbit will be raised systematically over the course of the next 2 days, placing it in close proximity to the International Space Station on Friday night Central Time. Control of the spacecraft from here on out will be overseen from the Russian Mission Control Center outside of Moscow.
Korolev. And Dr. Sergei Korolev. Chief. What was his title? Chief Designer of the Soviet Space Program. Where's this? I'm going to turn this video here.
Наблюдаем картинку.
We are receiving the image.
Wait.
Ожидаем от вас первый замер по контролю герметичности.
Standing by for your reading on the leak check.
Right, let's just wait for this to come online.
The 17-26 parameters.
And I have called missions successes before, and they turned out that in the end turned out to be failures. It seems panels and antennas. Yeah, panels and antennas have deployed, so I'm bouncing 25 that was my
So